Welcome back to the Pattern Accelerate mini series that Gabby and I have been doing. Today, we are incredibly excited to hop into our next topic, which is just brand building and creative opportunity on Amazon. So, this time around, we have brought in an amazing guest. If you don't follow her on LinkedIn, please do that now. Daxi Tomko. Daxi is a thought leader in the space who has done a lot of creative optimization and worked with a lot of brands to really make sure they are showing up on the platform 20 times better. So, this is a fun topic because, again, Gabby and I have been in the space for 7 to 9 years, depending on how long we want to look at. And this is an area where Amazon's made a ton of changes. I mean, from accessibility, what's available to brands, the consumer experience, they have made a lot of changes that is probably quite a heavy lift for brands, honestly. It's a lot to manage at this point. It can be incredibly overwhelming. But going back to the point of Gabby and I's conversation and presentation here, Amazon's striving to be Earth's most consumer-centric company. How does that relate to copy, brand, and creative? Well, Gabby, I think you have a lot to add on this subject. Do you want to give us your thoughts before we dive in?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's changed a lot over since I got started in the space and started working with brands in the space. I would say it wasn't much of a brand building opportunity. It was more of this. This is a little bit controversial, but it was more of truly an endless shelf back then, and there were less opportunities for brand building. There were less opportunities for adhering to brand guidelines and ultimately getting that equity and engagement with a brand. There's a plethora of different ways, but now it's completely transformed. I can really see that Amazon is doing a significant focus and investment in creating more real estate, more placements, more creative diversity to be able to allow brands to express their equity.
Absolutely. And I think that's been driven by two things. One, again, brands are investing more on the Amazon platform. They're seeing the value of it. They're seeing the advertising opportunity to showcase their brand. I think that's a really huge driver we'll probably dig a little deeper into. But again, going back to that main point, it's improved the customer experience quite a bit. Customers are very loyal to certain brands. And when they went to Amazon and they saw a terrible main image, or they clicked on a listing and they weren't sure who exactly was selling the product, it was a poor experience for the customer as well. So we saw Amazon tighten up on what was allowed in the main image. But then we also saw Amazon do things, like you said, add additional inventory, additional real estate. We have more brand building opportunity with video, with main images, and also things like premium content has really came to play. Gabby, do you have anything else to add on that before we dive into Day's expertise?
Yeah, so premium content or premium A plus page is a thorn in my side. I operate across a couple of different seller and vendor brands. And so I've been able to see this positioning change and the availability change. One thing is that it's free and available for all sellers.
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 Very important. If you're on the vendor side, this might be something that you have to negotiate up to $1 million access for during your annual vendor negotiation. So really frustrating one. Brand store has changed a heck of a lot too. Brand carousel on the PDPs has changed. Amazon posts, one of my favorite placements. This will become a monetized thing, but there's so much more. Again, the real estate that's available, but the premium A plus, great opportunity to jump into and take advantage of the creativity that you can have in all of those different modules. Hopefully you're on the seller side and get it for free. If you're on the vendor side, brush up your negotiation skills, friends.
Absolutely. I think that as we go back to that customer experience, the things that are most impactful, in my opinion, as a customer, is the main image, right? You type in a search term and you have 100 products that are directly in front of your face. If Amazon allowed you to upload any and every main image, which you somewhat see in like the furniture category, sometimes in apparel, it looks terrible. From a customer experience, it's not easy to differentiate, right? So Amazon's become a lot more restrictive on the main image, but I think the main image has become a lot more impactful as customers have gotten used to navigating Amazon. Day, with your experience across multiple brands, multiple categories, things like that, what do you find as the most actionable, most effective way to optimize a main image?
Yeah, so it's funny because, depending on the category, Amazon will play nice with you or not. Go deep in the supplement world, they are very nitpicky. So one way around that for us is we try to the band where the cap is, we usually use that as prime real estate to add either like a main benefit, or like say it's a protein tub, we want to call out the number of proteins, the grams of proteins and things like that. But I see brands take risks, and it's fun. It's fun to see that, and it also sucks because sometimes I can take that risk from the supplement side. But it's fun when brands play, and always adding like a flavor cue or a scent cue really does differentiate. It really does make you stop and look for a second. And one thing that I've seen lately, a lot of brands do like topical creams and stuff like that to add like a smudge of it or something like that, just so that the consumer right away gets to see the consistency of that product. Like that gets my attention as a consumer.
Yeah, absolutely. I fall into this issue a lot with the main image. I feel very strongly about main images as a consumer, because I often will order the wrong size of something because of how it looks in the main image, and I'm just quickly adding to cart because it's the same brand I always purchase. And I ordered like a 1 liter tub of yogurt instead of like a cup size per recipe, that kind of a thing. But what would have made it so much easier, and some main images do that, is they call out the, exactly as you're saying, the ounce of it, the size of it, if it's a multi-pack or whatever it may be. And that's so incredibly helpful for the consumer's perspective. So I think there needs to be a little bit of flexibility there from the Amazon TOS perspective. And yeah, to your point, it's not enforced equitably, I think, across.
Yeah, it's not. And I mean, it is such a huge value to the consumer to be quickly scanning through all of these images. And one of them says a 3-month supply. That's going to get my attention right away versus anybody else.
Another big one is flavor variations or ingredients. Like that's a big value add, being able to showcase that directly from that main image. So I don't have to click in and then kind of do the discovery on the listing. And that's what it's all about. Going back to ground zero, it's the click-through rate. How do you get someone to click into your listing? It should be table stakes to have fantastic photography, fantastic editing on the main image, but we still to this day see people upload a half-ass lazy main image. And if you have that, nothing else matters because you're not even going to get that initial click. But let's say you have a perfect main image. You've taken Dave's recommendations. You've absolutely optimized all the additional real estate on your page, whether it's the cap, whether it's utilizing, small graphic additions on the side. Someone clicks into a listing. What's next? Where do you think that brand should prioritize making optimizations on the PDP?
I think really the way when you look at the carousel images, you want to tell a story. And really that's kind of like all of Amazon, right? It's just different places in which you tell a story. So you want to walk the consumer through like, okay, here's the image. What does it do? What's it going to do for me? And I think brands, this probably goes back a lot to like how you guys were talking, how it used to be. It was just get things up there. Here's all the features. Let me put as much stuff as possible. Nowadays, the consumer really wants to just, what's it going to do for me? That's what brands have to really answer. So help the consumer see themselves either using your product, taking your product, all of that stuff. You have to use a lot of lifestyle images, and don't crowd every image with content because we're not reading it. You know what I mean? Like if it's a baby product, I want to see a cute baby. I don't need to see 20 bullet points on like why this specific product is the best. Just give me the best 2, 3,
One thing that Gabby and I were talking about before hopping on this is the correlation between what you're doing online and in store. We talked a lot about it in the advertising perspective and the incremental lift with search ads. You can check out that podcast later. But this is another really important area where it matters what you look like online. And you mentioned this, we alluded to it. People used to not do this because look, if you're going to buy a Gillette razor, you were going to buy it regardless of how terrible the listing was. You have an affinity for Gillette. It's no longer the stage. It's much more competitive. Gabby, can you kind of dive into what we discussed earlier and why it matters to have alignment between in-store and online?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say even more so than the alignment between in-store and online. But if you're a brand that operates in an omni-channel ecosystem, there are a plethora of data points out there that is proving the majority of consumers that are shopping online. And this is what we were talking about in one of our other episodes, is how consumer behavior, meaningfully shifted over the COVID period. Is they weren't going on in store anymore. And so now when they are going back in store, there was a massive spike between, okay, I'm in store, I'm looking at the physical shelf, and I want to evaluate the ratings and reviews about this product. I want to find out the most important information. There's only, there's 4 or 5 panels to packaging, depending on what your packaging looks like. But the point is, you have limited character count on your packaging, and the consumer might be able to touch, see, and feel there, but they can't imagine it in their day-to-day. They can't do that lifestyle. They can't, get the exactly as Dave was talking about, the benefits over the features. They're looking at the features, that's listing all of the ingredients in there, or basic specs and dimensions of the products or whatever it may be, but they're not able to get the more enrichment of that content, which they can do from their phone, looking up a listing. And so it's so incredibly important for brands to realize that how they show up on the digital shelf is so much of a marketing opportunity, just as much, if not more, than a sales opportunity, right? It's that entire offline lift, regardless of whether your sales are coming from Amazon.com or Walmart.com. It's really so much real estate to be able to take advantage of telling more of a story for the consumer they're doing that in store, and they're whipping out their phone.
Yeah, and you can always A/B test, with the experiments that you can run and see what's really resonating with the consumer, and go in that direction. You don't have to just guess anymore. You can test it.
Yeah. Always be
always be testing. Yeah, 100%. And we've talked about some of the specific areas where we've seen massive changes. I think another one of those areas is leaning into and utilizing stores. Now, I would love to poll the audience here, because I guarantee you, if I asked my grandma right now, who does shop on Amazon frequently, how do you get to a brand store? I really don't think she'd be able to tell me. If Amazon's listening, this is one of my biggest complaints. The opportunity with a store is huge. How do you actually go to a brand store? I think it's difficult to navigate, but we have seen a major lift across the board. For those who are not familiar or aware, Amazon actually gives you pretty in-depth store insights. You can view subpages, you can view times, you can figure out which of your subpages drives the most value in terms of AOV. There's a lot of different things we can dive into there. I would say traffic is actually relatively substantial as well. The majority of the traffic we do see is still typically driven from sponsored brand ads. Sometimes it's off platform, but all of that to say, I think it's a bad experience. The data shows people are visiting stores. Dave, I know you've spent a lot of time diving into stores. Can you just give us a high level of, one, the power of them, some of the things that you think brands are struggling with when it's maybe from assortment and selection? Just dive into your thoughts on stores. So
first, I love the brand stores. It's my favorite thing to work on. Oftentimes brands really just look at that as a place to throw all their products in, and they really forget that is where you are telling your full story. This is the only place on Amazon where there is no competitors. It is just you and your brand. You have to take advantage of that. Oftentimes people don't realize also that your DTC doesn't have to mirror your DTC, but you borrow a lot from that, even something as simple as adding a About Us tab, let the consumer know who you are, what your values are, what you stand for, the other companies that you work with, it's stuff like that. And even just adding things like recipes, if again, talking from the supplement with the proteins and stuff like that, you're giving value back to the consumer, and not just here's my product, I'm selling this to you, but it's the why have this product, why is this important to have in my life? This is all the things that you get to add to your brand store and ultimately connect to that consumer, that you're not just a product, like you're now they might actually like your brand. Sometimes I buy stuff just because I like what the brand stands for, you know?
Yeah.
So I absolutely love brand stores, and they're constantly, well, let me take that back. Maybe not constantly, but they have added some new modules that are really, really, really cool. The two newest ones that I've seen was the branded recipes, which on the back end of it, it is not an intuitive thing to get up, but say that I, for example, put up a recipe for one of our proteins, and it was like a protein smoothie or something like that. Every ingredient, it makes it live so that you can add all of those ingredients to your cart, and Amazon Fresh will deliver all of these ingredients for you to make this recipe. Like, that's incredible.
Yeah.
And think about, like, you could then now have an opportunity to do like collaborations with other brands, like a milk brand, or, you know, chia seeds, or whatever it is that you're adding to this recipe. What was the other one that I really liked?
I believe the other one that you really liked is the one that Gabby actually discovered live 3 years ago. It went viral on LinkedIn because it was one of the best features I've seen added to stores. And Gabby sent it to me, and we dove into it, did this whole research. Let's call a ton of people and figure it out. Gabby, do you want to talk a little bit more about what that was?
Oh, I'm so excited for them to figure this one and get it right. They've scratched the surface with it, but it's the quizzes, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the opportunity. There's so many ways that the quizzes can be infiltrated. Back in the day when we first discovered it, it was a third party that Amazon was partnering with. Pretty sure it's native on Amazon side now. They gathered some data and they saw how it was being used and maybe built their own version. But it's a really powerful opportunity for the brands, because at that time we had a very large portfolio within a particular brand, and we were trying to figure out what's the best way that we can guide a consumer to making the right decision for them, because we've got multiple different variations here. And so the quiz could really allow for that. But then, you know, there's more simplified versions that you could use the quiz of, being able to, you know, just a handful of questions. And a day that you've been experimenting with this with some of your brands, just a handful of questions that, again, help you discover what product is right for you. But it's also an enrichment of data for the brand to understand how consumers are you literally directly engaging with them, and what are they looking for, and how are they answering things. And again, we spoke in another episode about the rich data and how you can use that to inform other things. So it's the quizzes, to be confirmed on how deep they will go and what that back-end ecosystem will look like to be able to really get to an entire routine for skincare or wellness or whatever that might be. But Day, why don't you chat a little bit about your experience with the quizzes?
Yeah, I'll add again that the back-end user experience could use a little bit more of an intuitive touch.
Telling me that the world's most consumer-centric country or company isn't necessarily that for the back-end users.
Yeah, I honestly, though, like, me being obviously with a creative background, like I can work myself around. But if I'm a small seller, that would be really hard, I think, for me to try to navigate that system. So that's definitely like something to work on. But right now,
buttons in Seller Central.
there are so many buttons. When I tell you that the recipes one, you have to add each thing one at a time, like each ingredient. It was a lot. But anyways, for this new module, the quiz module is called product selector, and you can add up to 3 questions right now. And each question you can have up to 6 answers, I believe. But yeah, it's so cool. Like, I was working with this brand, and they have different scents, and we just the quiz was, which scent is right for you, or something like that. And the question was like, how are you feeling today? Are you feeling energetic or fresh? And then that would tie you to the ASIN, that is the citrus fragrance, or calm would tie you to lavender. And it was just such a fun experience. And ultimately, what that specific module is going to do is going to increase your dwell time on your store. And that means people are engaging with your brand more and learning more. And you want people to stay, you know what I mean? You want the consumer to stay, because at the end of the day, attention is going to equal dollars. So we want to keep their attention and keep them engaged.
I love that you wrap that back to dwell time and just the engagement, because I know that's something that a lot of people struggle with. Is there's so much when it comes to Amazon. I mean, there's so much that can be optimized and worked on. And one, in my opinion, that's one of the biggest competitive advantages of what we do here, is like keeping people up to date on all of those things. But you have your main image optimization, you have the brand stories, you have your like everything that goes into a PDP. On the advertising side, we have headline search ads that have to have a custom image now. All of your sponsored display ads can be video and image assets. We have Amazon Post, which have a follow button and also drive to the store page. That's something that's being completely underutilized. Amazon dabbled with customer engagement emails, and that's something that I think they're still trying to figure out on their end. That's not even getting into things like DSP. So if you have a portfolio of one SKU, it's still an absolute pain in the ass to keep up with it all. How do you prioritize? This is for both of you. Like, maybe Gabby handles prioritization and then we pass off a conversation with Day, but like, how do you prioritize when there's this much going on? And also, in my opinion, again, that is every small brand's competitive advantage if they can figure out how to prioritize. The big brands are struggling to keep up with all of the changes. The small brands have a really good opportunity if they know how to prioritize. Gabby, what are your recommendations there?
Yeah, look, hopefully you've got a great partner that can help you the execution side of it, or a great internal team that's trained there too. But look, it really depends on where your brand's baseline is. You know, there's so much that you can do, but there's a lot that is sufficient. And so if you've got it, you know, you don't need to boil the ocean, but maybe kind of build this checklist for yourself of, do you have a retail ready listing? And there's tons of resources online, or you can go through, you know, Amazon accreditation and whatnot and see what retail ready means. But, you know, just get to basic retail readiness and then build out your brand store. Have that part there too, because then that allows you to run a lot more different ad types, you know, if you're not getting to that point first. Posts is a great one, but posts, you don't need to worry about a timeline like Instagram necessarily. You don't have to worry about the time that you're posting it and the frequency. That was a favorite one for me, of when we had spare time every couple of weeks, we would repurpose some social posts and like dump them out, and then look back the next month and see how they're performing. And the amount of follows we were able to get from that. But that was
over 50,000 followers in a short period of time. I want to say it was under 12 months.
The easiest lift ever. Really.
And then customer engagement at the time allowed you to email those followers, which is a really cool touch point as well. And that's something small, like you said, maybe not needed, but very advantageous for a brand in a competitive space.
So easy to do, honestly. And you know, just block out 2 hours on the Friday afternoon once a month or whatever, and repurpose your social posts or B+ images or whatever it may be. You know, lifestyle works great there, but there's a lot more freedom there, and that's absolutely, why not? It's a free placement at this point. But getting the presence up there in all of these places first and foremost, and then getting to this place of optimization. But using metrics is making sure that whatever you're doing, are you tracking it? Are you tracking that conversion rate? Because then ultimately you're probably going to start spending less time on things if you don't know the value that it's adding. But trust it is adding the value, and you need to be testing it. And there's a ton of brand store metrics that are in there too. Obviously your advertising metrics of how certain creative is performing and driving to certain brand stores. But on the prioritization front, first and foremost, make sure you have retail readiness before you get into a place of optimization. And then, I mean, I love having a strong brand store. I think it's a non-negotiable now for every brand. And then I forget the name of the brand carousel that is on the product detail page, but that little strip in itself that allows you to tell the brand
story. Is that
Oh, the brand story. That's fairly new. Yeah.
Yeah, so the brand story is another new one. Like that's another great one that you can just kind of build out for your brand and deploy it across all of your items. Really, for the time spent and the value added, that's another one, you know.
Dave, correct me if I'm wrong. That's one that's actually pulling from other resources. Like you have to hit. Are you familiar with the actual? I don't think you build it, right?
I have brand story. Yeah, it's
interesting. I don't think that's how it started. I'd be very curious to dive into that. It used to be pulling from certain aspects of your store page. Or
if you're a listener and you know the story behind the brand story, we would love you to help us out.
Yeah, I've only been introduced to it from what it is now, which is very modular experience, just like the rest of, you know, the enhanced pages or the brand store.
That makes sense. And I think that actually leads us to the next conversation, in my opinion, which is AI. So another difficulty with all of this is Amazon has different brand guidelines, different specs for every single conversation we've had here. And today's initial point, the value of optimizing Amazon is optimizing for the point in which the customer is interacting. Whether that's your main image and the high purchase intent, whether that's your store page and more discoverability, that can be really difficult because it allows you to get really customized on what you're showing a customer at any point in that journey. But it means you can't just take an image and replicate it across every single one of these modules. Like that's a poor experience. So Day, I know you've been doing a lot of work in this area with leaning into AI to make tweaks to the same image, but also for just, again, spec optimization so you can utilize different images across the board. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
So one of my favorite AI little thing to do is Rufus. I love Rufus. How brands are starting to use it. It's literally, you know, the way the Rufus works. He cute little doggy. He's
is it a dog? Is it a he?
Yes. I mean, Rufus just sounds
Rufus
like
can't be a girl.
Name,
I didn't know. I was curious.
But it is definitely a dog's name. That's the backstory. It was somebody from Amazon back in the day. It was their dog name was Rufus.
Nice.
But they're polling the consumer. They're looking at all the reviews. So when you go and you look at what Rufus is saying, those first few questions that populate, that's what the consumer is asking. That already is telling you what you should be talking to the consumer about. So, for example, I worked with a baby brand, and one of the questions was, will the baby scratch their face? And it was like a onesie that covered the hands. Well, immediately that wasn't part of their carousel images. That's something that we want to talk about. Our onesies prevent your baby from scratching their face. We wouldn't have known that had not been for that question being up there, you know? So really leaning into those things that are in the platform is so advantageous and directs what you should be talking to your consumer about. And again, that's not telling them features. It's that benefit driven, like, this is why you should buy this because it's going to help you with your, you know, your
engage with the feedback that you're getting from the multiple sources. It's not just the reviews anymore. You know, it is those questions that are being asked. What about AI solutions for the creative production side of things? Is there anything fun that you've been testing, playing around with?
I mean, the ChatGPT, the image creator, that has been so much fun to see everybody like
crashing
the different, pretty much.
Yes.
All the different use cases for that. You know, Midjourney is really great for like environments and stuff like that. I will say that none of them are yet to nail down what the actual product looks like, but I use it a lot to like I'll you know, to get what is the word that I'm not a draft, but like a
wireframe or story,
like a wireframe. Yeah, just to like, I get my thoughts into ChatGPT of like, this is what I'm looking for, and it'll lay out like a very rough, you know, draft of what this should look like. And right up off the bat, I'm like, oh my God, that's great. So like I can add upon that. So it's having this extra brain power that can help me ideate something, and then I can, you know, then go ahead and produce it. It's been incredible. So I use it a lot for that, but I also use it for small things. Like if I need an image created of, like, just recently I used I asked it to outline different competitor products because I was doing a competitor image. I don't want to show the actual competitor, but I want to show the outline, and consumers can tell what it is. Built it in like two seconds, and it was great. Otherwise, before I would have to like go search and outline it and like do it all myself. The time that it saves is absolutely incredible. And
sorry.
No, I was going to say that's just like on the image creation, and like on the side of like image editing is absolutely incredible.
Yeah. One thing I was thinking about, that first example that you gave there of just to get the wireframe, I could see that actually being a really great practice for sellers and smaller brands and leaner teams to help work with their creative designers or their agency of that initial creative brief or that initial mock-up. I think that you and I have spoken about this in the past from a creative perspective of you trying to unjumble the yarn of a non-creative person of like, tell me what you want. And that could be probably a really great way to work with brands and have brands work with their creators to mock up something with words just to get something started and say like, here's what I prompted, here's what sort of it spat out, and like now I've got something to give initial feedback on instead of starting from complete scratch. And just thinking about some really lean teams that I've operated with before. I love the startup mentality. Everyone's wearing every hat. That could be a really great actionable way that smaller sellers and brands could start and to get the most out of in the most efficient way with their creators, either in-house or an agency.
Yeah, and that's also a really cool point, because I kind of sit in two worlds where like I'm on the brand side leading creative, but I'm also creating at the same time. On the brand side, I write all of my briefs with AI, and the creative team loves getting briefs from me because A, I do speak that language, but B, like it's so much more informed, and to have a prompt that anyone can really have to say, hey, I'm briefing a creative department. This is my product. This is what I need. Can, help me with what other things I can add to it. It'll spit that out for you. And you can create a template. You can create something that a designer or an agency can take and actually do that. What did you call it? Scrambling?
Untangle the yarn in my brain.
Untangle the yarn. Like you can do that on the brief, where oftentimes a brief causes a lot of confusion for designers. That's a huge win with the AI as well.
I would also like to throw out Creative Studio AI. That's something that I know you've worked a lot with. And for all of my native Amazon brands listening, let's say you don't quite understand how to use ChatGPT or Midjourney, or you haven't dabbled too much. Amazon's created their own solution. Now, directly within Ad Console, directly within Seller Central, their AI tools need some work. They're obviously being very restrictive with how they're rolling it out. They have a large audience they need to serve with a lot of different needs. Creative Studio AI is a whole separate platform that they have announced and released to the audience. We'll add the link in the comments. Why it's so beneficial, in my opinion, the images may not be as up to par as anything you would use externally, but what it does is it allows you to upload your ASIN or just type in your ASIN, and it pulls all of the information from your product into the AI. So the creative briefing process that we just chatted about, which has been a little bit difficult, it takes all of that into account, and it creates an image, whether it's a lifestyle image or anything that you want. And that's without any prompting. You also do have the opportunity to then upload your image and prompt, and it's 60% there. It's a thumbs up. It's 60% there in terms of understanding brand guidelines, I would say. But one of the things that I love is once your image is done, you can also edit it. So it allows you to add or remove certain features, and it's within Amazon guidelines and specs because it's an Amazon creative tool. Day, I know you've used some of the image editor. How would you rank it against the others?
It has a long ways to go, but this is probably one of the things I'm most excited about, to see how it comes along. Because it's a great experience, the way that they have it all laid out. And there's one in particular that I actually do use, and I don't remember the name now, but it'll take a still image and add movement to it.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've been messing around a lot with, is like, take the brand store, for example. A lot of times we'll add just a still image, but to add just like a subtle movement, it's going to catch somebody's attention. Again, yeah. So like, well, okay, so that would be a great example. Say that like I'll have a cup of coffee and it has steam,
Yeah.
if it like any kind of movement, like no words, not necessary. It's just to catch that attention that like, oh, wow, that's moving. I think it's just human nature to like your eye be attracted to movement. I really like that one a lot.
Yeah, this is one area that I have given a lot of feedback to my Amazon advertising partners as we looked at how we could deploy large Amazon advertising budgets, and there was constantly a push for more ad types that required video. And we, that ended up being a big bottleneck on our side sometimes, of we can't produce video that we feel like is worthy of getting out there. And sometimes we would use some of the tools that were available, and the conversion rate just really wasn't great when we could get some assets that were a better, bigger production. That then they would perform significantly better. But that is often a big barrier to a lot of brands and sellers, both on the image, and then, ultimately at some point they'll get over to the video side, of being able to create those types of assets, especially if you want to be in this realm of always be testing. You want to be able to create it with speed. Is that Luna or LJ? Because for those of you that are listening, you're missing out. There's a great cat.
Luna has joined the podcast, but I am in tune with all of your Amazon advertising recommendations.
All I want is for that perfect moment where it just goes like this, and
she does.
Would love the little mustache. But they took a lot of this great feedback for sure, and developing out this the AI creative studio, and as they're going to continue to build this out, this isn't one of those things that they're building out and is going to go away. It's only going to get better. Jump on it whilst it's available now, start to learn it, start to take advantage of it, but it's only going to improve. I'm so excited for the next generation of it as well.
Yeah, and it's something that's changing so often. You really need somebody in your team that's like dedicated to staying on top of these things, because the moment that something comes available, like, you want to test it out, you want to use it, and that's how you're going to stay more relevant. Yeah,
it's going to be a huge unlock. And like, kind of summarizing this whole conversation we're having, Amazon creative and brand building has changed incredibly fast, driven by consumer needs, also brand changes, things like that. Amazon's realized that change and opened up a ton of opportunity across the board. And that opportunity has been incredibly overwhelming for a lot of people. You can't do it all, or else you spread yourself too thin. What do you focus on? What do you prioritize? And now we have something fun like AI, where just 12 months ago, it couldn't produce fingers. And now we're at a point where it is absolutely incredible in less than 12 months. So I think it's leveling the playing field for the people who know where to lean into. And I think, to Gabby's point, everything is going to come down to prioritization. We now have the resources and the operational capabilities to compete with people who have always had a budget advantage, whether it's from the teams they're hiring or how they are deploying it with ad spend. It's leveling the playing field, which makes things really exciting if you know where to focus your time.
Yeah. And I think because of all of these additions of AI, like you mentioned before, it's scraping the PDP. Yeah. So Rufus is scraping your PDP. All of these AI features are going back to that source of truth. So that's why it's really important that you have your PDP as optimized as possible. And it's not optimized once and you walk away from it. No, you're constantly needing to do the research on what your competitors are doing and update things. Even sometimes it's just like a word, like it's things that matter. And again, AI is scraping that. So you want to make sure that it's up to date so that it's giving the consumer the best outcome, but also pulling the latest information about your product.
Absolutely. Well, I think we covered almost all of it. I would say all of it and then some. That's like a bonus episode for everyone. Wanted to thank everyone for again listening in. Reiterate, please follow everyone here on LinkedIn. We're always posting a ton of valuable feedback in every single one of these areas. And if you came across any questions that were sparked from this episode, feel free, send them our way. We will get them answered. But thank you guys so much for joining me today.